And Lloyd and I have just gotten back from midnight screenings of X-Men Apocalypse. So heads up, spoilers, we've seen the film, you might not have. If you don't mind, carry on. Lloyd, you're a big fan of Apocalypse as a villain, aren't you?
Yeah, he's probably he is my favorite X-Men villain. Probably one of my most favorite comic book villains of all time.
It pains me to ask them, what did you think of X-Men Apocalypse?
He was Oscar Isaac, who plays Apocalypse, is fantastic. The voice is fantastic. I love what they did with the detail of his suit. They delved into the history of Apocalypse, which was amazing. He was just so squandered through the second and third act. It got a bit too crowded throughout the whole film, and he just didn't become a threat at all. Like, everyone just joined forces, taking him out, and no one really dies. Like, Havoc dies, but he wasn't really given a moment. Personally, I think they just gave him like a Marvel death. Like, he didn't actually die. He can come back, just so they've got that ability to bring him back in another storyline if they want to. And I'm just really disappointed, because if you got a character as strong as Apocalypse, everyone, like, so many people should die. It should be like an army of mutants trying to stop him. They're just dying, like like waves and waves of them are just dying as they try to combat him. But I just didn't get that.
Overall, this film really reminded me of the Avengers Age of Ultron, because Ultron was like ultimately this really powerful villain who was threatening to, I believe, take over all the technology, be everywhere at once, in the same kind of way that Apocalypse wants to use Xavier in this film to be everywhere at once.
Great comparison.
And I think I had the problem with Ultron when I watched Age of Ultron. My issue was that it felt like a kind of a bottle episode, that nothing really happened, and that the villain was beaten in this individual film, and it brought a few new faces to the Avengers, just as this has brought a few new faces to the X-Men, but it just feels like people are moving on a board, I'll give you an example. Jean, early on, when she has the dream, Jean Grey, she says she's afraid someday she's going to hurt someone, and she says she sees fire in her dreams. So, we know Jean becomes the Phoenix in the future
But they did that in the third one. The third one's always the worst one.
That's what they say, yeah. They come out of Return of the Jedi and they immediately diss The Last Stand, which was great. So you I was expecting at that point that she would become the Phoenix.
Age of Ultron at least had a death of Quicksilver, which was slowed down. And interestingly enough, we pointed that out in the podcast, that Ultron hijacked a ship and shot him with bullets, and not even his own powers could kill one of the Avengers, which was just such a plot hole. But at least Quicksilver there was pause given to Quicksilver's death. But you're right, Ultron was not a threat in Age of Ultron. Everyone just had a field day killing armies and armies of robots. And unfortunately, with Age of Apocalypse, I just felt the same. I love Bryan Singer. I think he's a great director. A few missteps in his filmography, mainly, of course, Superman. The Returns, which I thought was just absolutely horrible. Jack and the Giant Slayer just went on for way too long, but he is an incredible talent. I love X-Men 2 and Days of Future Past. I probably put Days of Future Past just a little bit above it. That's still probably my most favorite X-Men. I really thought Apocalypse was going to be the definitive, like, all of it colliding together to this epic story, and it just wasn't.
Well, this is the problem. We're following Days of Future Past, which I watched just before going to the midnight screening. And so I suppose it's like listening to a really great album. Then there's the pressure on the band, or the crew in this case, to make an equally good album or a better album, with X-Men Apocalypse here.
And it's worse. It's like that band going, we got like the best guitarist guest starring in this as well, X-Men has a legendary villain, Apocalypse, with so many stories they can draw from, And I'm specifically referring to, I think it was called Age of Apocalypse, the graphic novel, which you've read, of course, Dave. I could be saying it wrong. It's where the world, it's in a different universe where Apocalypse is rule the world. It's one of the greatest one of the greatest comic books I've ever read. I love it to death. And, you just, at the end of that, you're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'm not saying I wanted that in X-Men Apocalypse, but I wanted that kind of epicness to it, like that kind of, wow, this is the villain, it's got to be this massive showdown, which it was. Just, he wasn't a threat.
I mean, yeah, it just felt like everyone attacked him at once at the end, and I always feel like...
I'm surprised Captain Planet didn't pop out, to join in, just chuck in everyone, Mickey Mouse, Donald, whatever, just like, oh, come on, guys.
I always feel in those scenarios that Beast is a bit useless, and that Mystique, like... For me, Mystique, she's got fighting skills. She's shown them off in previous films. But as soon as she reveals that she is Mystique, I feel like...
What are you going to do, ninja kick him?
Yeah. So I don't know. She's not that powerful either. So for me, Magneto's a fascinating character. And you've mentioned that it's like Shakespeare when you get James McAvoy, what's his name, Michael Fassbender together. For Magneto to have this whole new life and a daughter, I was fascinated, And initially I was like, oh, he's got a daughter. Is that going to be Scarlet Witch, because Scarlet Witch, played by Elizabeth Olsen, is the twin of Quicksilver. They're both technically Magneto's children, even though they're not acknowledged as such in the Marvel universe.
How confusing must that be for people who are not familiar with the comic books or who are not familiar with the business side of things? Just like, but they never refer to him as Quicksilver, though, so...
That's true. He's, what is he? Peter Maximoff. So I was thinking initially, maybe they're doing something different, where they introduce this other child as this other mutant, and maybe, in this telling of X-Men, they're not twins. So I was trying to figure out who Nina, this daughter, was, up until the point where she was controlling animals, and then, of course, Magneto sees his family murdered in front of him.
That was a really bad sequence. It's awful what happened, but I just thought the mechanic of the arrow misfiring and going into them, I think it should have been a different weapon somehow, but I just can't think of one that Magneto could stop, because obviously an arrow made of wood he couldn't stop. But specifically when Michael Fassbender started yelling, "Is this what you want?" That was such a huge misstep in the drama of it, like the direction of it. It's just like, who are you screaming to, God? Like, obviously that's in reference to the existential crisis he has. Meeting Apocalypse is a god. Maybe that's the god he follows. But I don't know if Bryan Singer was going in that direction. It would have been so much more powerful just to have Michael Fassbender crying over his dead family, and then him screaming it out, "Is this what you want?" It was just such a huge misstep.
I agree, and for me, what bothered me most about that scene, besides the fact that people were murdered, was that the acting of the guards as they were collapsing.
Yeah.
I was like, because Michael Fassbender's so good, these actors are so bad. I was like, no,
that's a great point. Yeah, he completely overstaged them, and it's not Fassbender's fault. It's the fault of casting actors just not on his level. And plus, they could have...
Yeah, out of focus in the background or something, they would have been just as effective if they just collapsed in the background. I
completely agree, yeah. If you don't... Yeah, that's a perfect... perfect idea. Great framing. That would be awesome. And they could have pushed that a little more, how... I love it how Magneto's trying to escape. He's starting this life. He's got friends at the factory, and all those cop guys. He's like, "I had dinner at your house." They could have pushed that a little bit more. Wasn't enough of that. And when he kills them off, it's just so whatever.
When he goes back to the factory to murder everybody, seals them in, and he says to them, "Think about the people you love. They're about to lose someone they love." And Apocalypse turns up, and he just basically makes everybody sink into the ground. I don't know where that power was in the third act, because all these people were attacking him. Couldn't he just make them sink into the ground?
Yeah, that's the great thing about Apocalypse is the ambiguity of his powers. I never knew the backstory of Apocalypse, and I'm such a huge fan that he was this... I knew he was a part of the Egyptian mythology, but I didn't know he gained mutants' powers, over and over again. It's unknown. The quantity is just completely unknown how much power he has, and that's always a dangerous step with Apocalypse. Okay, he is a god, and once he has Xavier's power, literally he is God. He can go inside anyone and take away free will effectively. and all that. But yeah, it's such a dangerous territory. You're just working the plot into all these plot holes. Once you start introducing a character as powerful as Apocalypse.
I want to talk about his Four Horsemen for a second.
Which one? The one at the very beginning, like when he's
all
in
four
Egypt?
of them.
Okay,
all four of them.
All four of them. The present one, Magneto.
The present day ones, yeah. The past tense ones. I mean, they don't survive very long. They looked interesting, but ultimately they're just background. The new ones, which he accumulates, for me it was annoying because he seemed to recruit the first mutants he met. He sees Storm. Storm is quite powerful. He recruits her immediately. Then he meets Psylocke and he's like, cool, I'll recruit you too.
By the way, what a stunner. I loved it from Broadcast News or whatever the one the writer of Social Network has made. It's not called Broadcast News, but the chick in it, she's just so distractingly beautiful. Like, I just kept, my eyes just kept shifting over to Psylocke, even if she was just...
in the newsroom?
The newsroom, sorry.
Newsroom?
Yeah, she's fantastic in the newsroom. I can't remember her character's name, but the person...
Olivia Munn plays Psylocke.
Yeah, she plays a great
one.
character in the newsroom. And she's just absolutely stunning as Psylocke, and I've always loved Psylocke. Ever since I was a kid, I read it in comics. Like, how could you not? She's this absolutely beautiful girl. The dress she has to wear, she's so brave. And every time she was just on screen, like, my eyes just kept shifting towards her. It's just so distracting.
She was here for eye candy, Lloyd. I'm not going to lie to you. In the comics, I vaguely remember that she had a relationship with Angel, though that didn't seem to come across in the film at all.
There was just a little bit when they recruit Angel, like, it looks like there was a little bit of a past there, but not even touched on.
And I mean, they recruit Angel based on nothing, the fact that he's the closest mutant.
And he was such an important character in the comic books. Like, he is Death, like Apocalypse's Grand General. And I understand if Magneto's going to join the Four Horsemen, obviously you're going to make Magneto the captain. But yeah, just a little bit more fleshing out. Like, we all got that was Storm, the first recruit, and she's a bit, fragile with her allegiance, obviously, because she follows Mystique and she admires her. And Storm's actually a good person, but really shifts her backstory quite a bit.
For me, in that final sequence with Storm, I was just waiting for her to flip sides. The same way I was just waiting for Magneto to change sides.
I thought Psylocke was going to do it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of thought Psylocke would live. I felt like they were setting up this cool character to bring her back in Deadpool or something else,
And Archangel definitely... Yeah, he definitely dies, doesn't he, in that plane crash?
It looks like it, yeah.
I'm assuming he's dead.
Yeah, which is another interesting way to sort of get rid of a character. It's kind of a smaller death, and that's okay. Look, I think they did okay with Nightcrawler. I think comically he was great. He was familiar, like the Nightcrawler we knew from X-Men 2.
I love it how they give him the Thriller jacket as well. That was fantastic.
Yeah, and he was fun. He's an Aussie actor, Cody Smith-McPhee, who plays him, and he did a good job. And the one thing I wondered if they would touch on, though, was the fact that Mystique is his mother. Did you know that, Lloyd?
No, I didn't.
So Mystique is Nightcrawler's mother. They sort of never really did any kind of acknowledgement throughout the film. The father was Azazel, who was the Red. Jason Fleming played him in X-Men First Class. He was like a devil-looking bad guy. So theoretically, from First Class, Mystique became pregnant and then at some point, delivered and gave up this baby, because we've jumped from, what was First Class, 1960-something?
Yeah, the
62?
Cuban Missile Crisis, yep.
Yeah, and now X-Men Apocalypse is 1983, so... it sort of creates the 20-something years required for Nightcrawler to be around. It's complicated, though, because nobody's aged in 23 years. If you really sort of think about it. Try not to think about it too much. James McAvoy, all right, Professor Xavier. From the beginning, I was like, what accent is he doing? What is this? It sounds so familiar, and it took me a little while to realize he sounds exactly like Ewan McGregor when he was playing Obi-Wan Kenobi. It doesn't sound quite right. And I mean, it doesn't sound like Patrick Stewart's Xavier anyway. But did you enjoy the fact that Magneto could sort of control the Earth. I mean, they over-explained it with those soldiers in the bunker.
Yeah, I'm assuming all the powers were amplified because of Apocalypse. He was able to amplify. I don't know what Psylocke got. I guess her sword got longer. I don't know. Her psionic sword, whatever the hell that's called. And Storm, I guess her lightning is stronger. I'm not too sure there. But obviously with Magneto, I don't know if it's a case of Apocalypse is going, no, you've always had this power within you. You just got to believe. Or if it's a case that Apocalypse can actually amplify all their mutant powers.
Well, I mean, he amplifies Xavier's with being able to send a message to everyone in the world at once, which is interesting.
With Magneto, did you think the switch to Apocalypse was just too fast? You just didn't believe it? Like, obviously, Apocalypse came at a very vulnerable time. Did you believe that switch?
I would have probably enjoyed more scenes where he was either conflicted or being convinced, I suppose. Apocalypse just seemed to speak in big monologues, which is kind of like what Ultron did, where he's got this kind of booming, recognizable voice. And I don't know. His bark was worse than his bite, I suppose, with Apocalypse. Yeah.
He just seemed like a zombie after his family died, and he was just going through the motions, which I like that idea, but probably just sideline Magneto, just have him as a guy who just, like, they come to him for help and he just won't do it because of what happened to his family. He's just given up. He's just a shell. And then, Apocalypse has recruited these other four guys, have Archangel as as this really powerful, as his main horseman, Death. And maybe they should have went that route, but I just felt he was just too sidelined. And then at the end, when he comes in, he puts that X to protect them of metal, and he starts attacking. I had somebody clap in my cinema. That's like the scene started cheering. And I was like, okay, yeah, it's working for some people. What'd you think of
the visual cue of the X? First of all, I mean, it's so subtle.
What'd you think of Rose Byrne coming back? Like, was that explained in First Class? I can't remember that he did in fact wipe her mind.
Well, I guess it was after the fact he wiped her mind, because he wiped everybody's mind. It was never confirmed what happened in Cuba. Sure. So I guess nobody
wasn't that a
remembers
touching scene? He kisses her and then a tear rolls down her eye.
Oh, she's a great actress, Rose Byrne.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think the only misstep she was in since we've been doing these podcasts has been Neighbours, and like Bad Neighbours. It's not a case that she was bad in it. It's just obvious her acting style wasn't comfortable with the improv of the comedian actors that were involved in Bad Neighbours. But I love Rose Byrne. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful girl.
For me, she was on the ship, and I kept thinking of Amy Adams as Lois Lane in Man of Steel. I was like, what is she doing on the ship? Is she flying the ship? I mean, Beast is flying the ship. What's she doing there? And
yeah, she's got a pilot license, Dave. She's a good secondary pilot for some reason.
Yeah, or something. I mean, I just kept thinking, what is she doing here? Like, she's put herself in danger anyway.
It's weird how she's obviously a CIA agent or interested in archaeology or something. She takes out a guard that's guarding Apocalypse's tomb, and then she goes into the tomb. I just thought, oh man, couldn't she wait for the guard to disappear? I just couldn't believe that Moira McTaggert could take out a guard. That was just it was a bit rocky right from the beginning, this movie, for me.
I mean, I found it difficult to believe she was working alone as well. Like, she didn't radio in or let anyone know her location.
She was just by herself, a very attractive woman, vulnerable in the 80s Cairo, Egypt. I'm not saying it's a dangerous period, but you're going up against this cult. Wouldn't you want some bodyguards or something? I just want to talk quickly about the very beginning of the film, where we see Apocalypse's kingdom in Egypt, or in ancient Egypt. I love it how the guards, obviously some rebels there of the false god, they start hammering away at these pillars that are keeping these rocks there, and all the rocks start sliding in, obviously encasing Apocalypse inside the pyramid, like for a long period of time. That reminded me so much of a Howard Hawks movie called Land of the Pharaohs, where like all these things are in place, and they remove all these boulders and everything, and all this sand starts falling, and all these other boulders and things move in encasing everyone inside the pyramid. That was really cool. And I love it how briefly you see the last of Apocalypse's horsemen guarding him loyally before they all die inside the tomb. That was really fantastic. And what followed was that incredible credit sequence, and that's I saw this in 3D, and that's one of the best 3D experiences I've ever had. Like everything, it was just a full-on assault on the senses. Like every bit of title, every bit of credits, all the history that we're going through was just assaulting myself. I was like, wow, this is amazing.
See, that didn't really play in 2D, so I'm glad that there was a purpose to it.
Yeah, this is actually shot in 3D. Bryan Singer's been working a lot with it over the years, and this film looked fantastic in 3D. Really, really well done. Much better than when we saw Batman versus Superman. That was terrible.
Yeah. I concur. Yeah, that was painful. One thing they did bring back from Days of Future Past that everybody in my cinema loved was the Quicksilver slow motion sequence. This time it was to Sweet Dreams, and look, he flies through the Xavier School as it's exploding, saving everybody except Havoc, as we learn. And there's no real animosity that he's forgotten to save Havoc, but yeah, he zips through the place, and I mean, did your cinema enjoy that as well?
Oh, I loved it. I was laughing so hard to notice anyone else laughing. I thought he stole the show once again.
It's all the subtle little things he does along the way, like when he takes a drink of a drink or he saves the dog, you know. There's a lot of comedic moments.
And I love the shot, like the bee is just pausing, and you knew what was going to happen. You see his feet come in, and then he stops looking at the car, driving in with Scott Summers, Jean, and Nightcrawler in the car. They're all having fun. And that from that moment, you're like, all right, let's shift gears a bit here, guys. You know, it's just fantastic. Well, great build-up to that scene. It was incredible.
And so many kind of awkward students, like going for their first kiss or whatever, you know. And then, of course, we get the return of William Stryker, probably going to be heavily involved in Wolverine 3. You know, he captures them. We get this fantastic cameo, Lloyd. Weapon X is on the loose. And, I mean, this whole sequence told me what Wolverine was going to be, Wolverine 3. The fact that he now has the metal claws, they've experimented on him, he's lost part of his memory, he's more animal than man. And then it takes Jean kind of stopping and touching his hand and returning some of his memories to him. What do you think Wolverine 3 is going to be like?
Oh, I hope it's going to be better than Wolverine 1 and 2. Because I didn't like those. Like the Japan one was okay, but it just went by the numbers for me. But yeah, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. I love Hugh Jackman. He's the most perfect Wolverine. Like I pay out those movies, but there's nothing against Hugh Jackman. I think he's fantastic.
And this whole sequence was really good, where he's whipping people around and like there's blood. But it's still keeping the rating down in this one.
Yeah, I love the device of it. Like, it was just a case like, oh, we need to get our friends out. What should we do? And they just let out a beast that in the lab, so to speak, that the security team can't hold down, and that gives them the ability to free their friends. He was just a device. He wasn't a big focal point. So that was really, really well handled.
And that helmet was good too. Just kind of a subtle, you know, they've been experimenting on him.
He should have had more hair and stuff like that, because Wolverine's a really hairy guy, but if you're going to cast someone as beautiful as Hugh Jackman, so to speak, you're not going to hide him in hair, because I've read those Wolverine origin stories, and he's just this hairy beast, like literally a beast with claws, you know, like, and he comes out of the cage in this, I'm like, wow, he's a very beautiful man.
I think it definitely sets up, and I mean, we'll talk about the post-credit sequence too. I think it definitely sets up for Wolverine 3.
Do you think there was too many setups in this movie? Like
for Wolverine, or
well, just for other movies, like you talked about the Dark Phoenix, how they're foreshadowing that a little bit. Obviously, Wolverine, and then there's just these. I don't know. It's just like they should have focused everything on Apocalypse rather than building up all these setups. I can't think of other examples. Like probably my biggest complaint is just Quicksilver not telling Magneto I'm his son, because aren't you going to tell him someday? And you're like, oh, come on, this is Apocalypse, guys. This is the most dangerous villain in the X-Men universe, like one of the most dangerous villains, top 3, top 2 maybe. this is the definitive moment where everyone should reveal the darkest bits of their past. But it just felt like everything was a setup for X-Men 7, 8, and 9. Whatever we're up to.
you can't have Magneto join the X-Men at the end, I suppose. But if Quicksilver had told him that he was his son, then I guess he would have stuck around, because he's lost his family, he wants another family. He's got family in Quicksilver, so we're going to keep calling him Quicksilver even if he's Peter Maximoff. But I suppose by not telling him you don't have Magneto stay, he's off on his own adventures. And I'm guessing if they're going to create another X-Men property, it'd be a good idea to do a Magneto standalone movie. I loved the line, and my cinema reacted the biggest to Quicksilver saying, is that going to happen to all of us, when he saw Beast. That for me got the biggest laugh across the board. How'd you find the CGI? Let's get into that.
I'm trying to think. I thought it was pretty good overall. I can't think of any standout moments where I went, that's it. Because bad CGI is when you notice the CGI, so I can't think of too many moments where that happened. What about for you?
The CGI I thought was alright. Obviously we saw some of it in the trailer, so we were prepared for what we were going to see. For me, the problem was the wire work. Every time kind of Beast does jumps and throws cars, and when Psylocke was doing that flip through the car, you really notice that they're on wires.
That's a great point. Maybe they've gone over the top with it a little bit. I know wire work has just gone crazy post-Matrix. We're in a post-Matrix world, where wire work is just so heavily used. And yeah, that moment for me, I was just thinking, yeah, okay.
It kind of takes you out of it. And I mean, you're supposed to be watching this great fight sequence between, what's her name? Storm and Cyclops. Psylocke takes on Beast. At the same time, Nightcrawler's fighting Angel for the second time. They had that kind of Fight Club scene with the beginning. But all these sort of things going on, it takes you out of it if you notice the strings, so to speak. The wire work for me was kind of... It took away from the action, and people have complained about Bryan Singer's action, but I haven't noticed much of it. This I did notice, which was unfortunate. I did enjoy the fact that Mystique was a big hero to so many because of the events of Days of Future Past. She's one of the original X-Men. She inspires all this younger generation, and that's fine. I enjoyed that stuff. But I did think, because it is Jennifer Lawrence's last outing as Mystique, you could
really?
kill
She
the
said
character.
That?
Yeah.
No way. I was just about to say, I think she's an absolutely fantastic actress and character playing that role. She just carries so much charisma. I really did believe, wow, people are following her, and she's a very conflicted person trying to do what's good, and she's kind of a rogue as well. She doesn't follow orders, and at the end she's really come full round, at the end of Apocalypse.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a great time to kind of martyr her for the cause, if you will, because if she's not coming back,
they should have killed her.
Why not have Apocalypse kill her in that moment?
And he would have been a threat. The problem with these stupid... I love comic book movies, but the problem with these movies now is just no one can die. And it just takes away so much from the drama. For a villain to be a big threat, people just have to die. Wouldn't it be great if he just strangled her and everyone went, oh my gosh, Mystique is dead, and then everyone rallied to her? Wouldn't that have just been a really, big, huge moment of the film?
You're preaching to the choir here, man. Yeah, like I said, it took away a lot of the strength of Apocalypse. The teleporting was great. I mean, Nightcrawler got to teleport them all onto the ship and then off of the ship and, be a really integral part. I remember I used to play this X-Men game on Sega Mega Drive, and whenever we would get stuck, you would use Nightcrawler and you would literally just shift through a wall, And it was the quickest way to get through this level, or any level, really. He was the ultimate kind of get-out-of-jail-free card, and he was used to that effect in this film. Yeah, I just feel like I expected Jean to turn into Phoenix. I expected Magneto to turn. I kept waiting for Storm to change sides too. Ultimately, unfortunately, having that kind of Age of Ultron rebuilding of the X-Men, where at the end you see them all in the danger room, and Xavier is now bald Xavier, which we know from the trailer. I feel like it was just pushing the pieces to where they need to be to continue the story.
Yeah, great point. Rather than be like, I felt like all roads should have led to this movie, like just a big epic showdown with a super villain. Like, it should have just had more meaning to the world, sort of like how Magneto is like always represented that opposing view of mutants. Like, no, we are the strong ones, we should be the superior race. That sort of ideology that he brings to the table. Apocalypse does bring the idea of a deity of the mutants, that maybe this guy is a god, maybe he's right in his sense that we should be the ruling class. They just didn't follow. In the end, Apocalypse was this 2D madman cutout with some flimsy Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse who would turn on him at any second. I felt like he should have had like an army of people. Like, whatever happened to those zealots that were worshipping him, you know, building that whole arc? Like, all that was just completely sidelined. Apocalypse was happy to just recruit 4 guys really quickly, and then just all of a sudden we had this big showdown with a pack of kids that weren't really well trained to deal with Apocalypse, yet they still managed to take him down. Like, they weren't the X-Men, really. They were just these kids who haven't really been in any combat, and they take down one of the greatest villains of all time.
But it's, as you see, they become the X-Men. And though Charles sees them as students and not soldiers, they become the soldiers they need to be to win the day, Lloyd. So I kind of didn't really love the fact that when Apocalypse was pinned there, and they did pin him, and then they all shoot at him at the same time in the ultimate kind of, if we all work together, it'll get done. They shoot him, and Phoenix kind of obliterates him, and he sort of turns into a skeleton and sort of fades away, and it's the end. That's the end of Apocalypse. He's dead.
One of the greatest villains in all of X-Men just goes out like that.
Yeah. And I mean, he's almost like the Thanos of the X-Men world. I mean, he's sort of supposed to be this ongoing, immortal first mutant, you know, survival of the fittest, and immediately Apocalypse is not the fittest. You know, which I guess is kind of a frustrating place for Apocalypse to be. It was only okay for me, you know. I enjoyed the ride enough, but I just kept waiting for the inevitable beats that are sort of in the trailer and stuff.
I'm not one to give reviews going meh, you know. I'm not like that. I'm just really, really disappointed because the casting is perfect in this film. The director they got is a supreme talent, and I'm just very disappointed with what they came up. They just came up short. It should have, like, maybe I'm carrying too many expectations because I love X-Men, but just where Days of Future Past went, X-Men 2, First Class, you know, and then to have Apocalypse, and the trailers looked incredible, you know, at the end, and to come out of the movie going, oh man, you know, I'm just very disappointed.
Well, let's talk about Wolverine and the post-credits sequence before we wrap up. For those of you who aren't going to watch it, this is the post-credits sequence. It shows all the aftermath of Wolverine's, fighting through the hallways, escaping as Weapon X. And it shows the bodies littered around. There's a cleanup crew and scooping up all the bullets and bodies. And some guys in suits come in and they basically extract these vials that Weapon X's DNA, blood if you will, and they put them in a what do you call it, briefcase. They close the lid. It says SX Corporation or something, implying, I suppose, that they have Wolverine's DNA. Perhaps they have his healing ability. Perhaps they have his mutant ability, or they're going to at some point. They have something of his DNA.
Well, I hope he does fight another Wolverine clone, because you remember in X-Men 2, the climactic moment where Stryker's best bodyguard is that girl. And then they have
Lady
that
Deathstrike kind of thing.
Yeah, they have that incredible fight scene where she ends up just getting, I think, the metal just down her throat, and she just turns into the. From memory, it's been a long time since I've seen X-Men 2, but that was one of the coolest fight scenes in the entire superhero movies I've ever seen. That was awesome.
Well, I mean, you need Wolverine to fight sort of an equivalent villain. It was kind of silly in the Wolverine, the Japanese story. We talked about that on the podcast, but we kind of found it silly, the villain at the end. It would be good if, I suppose, they created Sabretooth or an equivalent kind of...
Yeah, bring Sabretooth in, yeah.
Yeah, or an equivalent kind of Wolverine, with the same abilities, or even more than one person with the ability to heal. They don't necessarily have to fill them with adamantium, but if he's stabbing people and they're healing and they keep coming, even if they have other mutant abilities, I mean, it'd be a bit of a more level playing ground.
They're going an R rating as well for it, just because of the Deadpool, the phenomenal, absolutely colossal success of Deadpool. They're going more extreme with it, which I think Wolverine really does suit it. Like, it's not necessary for a lot of other superhero movies to go in the R-rated direction, but I think Wolverine would definitely be suited for that kind of area.
And Hugh Jackman has said that he's retiring Wolverine. He won't be playing Wolverine after Wolverine 3. So do you think they should retire the character, Lloyd?
No, he's one of the best characters in the entire... And Hugh Jackman is just phenomenal. Well, I've got faith in casting, just after McAvoy and Fassbender, I've got a lot of faith in recasting these great X-Men characters. They've just done a phenomenal job with all of them. Like, even the new person who plays Storm, I think she's great. The new person from Game of Thrones is playing Jean Grey, and I'm sorry I'm forgetting all these names. It's just, we just came out of the movies, it's 4 a.m, I haven't done any research. I think
Sophie Turner's Jean Grey.
Yeah, I think they're all fantastic. If they're gonna recast Hugh Jackman, which I'm gonna be very sad to see him go hang up the claws, so to speak. I think they're going to do a great job, whoever they cast in that role.
The great thing about that is the character of Logan is, like 100 years old or whatever he is, because of his healing factor. He looks the same for a long time. He's aging more slowly. So if you did reboot Wolverine and go in a younger direction, as a young man, he joined the army and stuff, you could sort of do a bit more of a period piece. Like in the first Wolverine film, it sort of implied all this backstory with this kind of montage with him and Sabretooth. So you've kind of could expand all that mythology. So there'd be a lot of things you could do with it. Well, that was X-Men Apocalypse. Unfortunately, it didn't live up to our expectations, but that's okay. The next one we're going to be covering on the podcast, guys, we're going to be journeying back and checking out Spotlight, and also talking about the Best Picture winners from the previous Oscars in some depth. So we'll get into that. As always, you can find more from us at www.podmeifyoucan.com, and we have a YouTube channel you can find a link to. A lot of videos going up every week, and a lot of them are obscure films with famous stars in them. So it's a good one to check out and subscribe to if you're on YouTube. But until next time, Lloyd, and listeners, all the best.
Hit it.
Ooh, yeah.
Thank you for listening. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Go to www.podmeifyoucan.com. Pod Me If You Can. Movie reviews.